is a brand new tuner from LDG Canada. It's dedicated for the IC-705. Let's take a look. It's a long time since I handled an LDG tuner, but things in the UK have changed somewhat as regards distribution, and we at Waters and Stanton are now able to bring in LDG tuners direct from the factory in Canada, and I'm happy that we can do so. The one I'm going to talk about today is the LDG Z-100-PLUS IC-705. Rather a mouthful, and it's, as its title would suggest, it is dedicated for use with the Icom IC-705, although it has actually slightly wider applications, which I'll come to later in the review. You know, it's always difficult to evaluate an antenna tuner because you can read the specification, you can see what the impedance is and so forth that it's able to handle, but these are somewhat sort of vague specifications, because my experience is that very often you can get a tuner to do something that you didn't expect it to do, and sometimes you find that the tuner doesn't do quite what you hoped it would do. So I approached the LDG Z100 with the rest of the title with a curiosity really. What would it do? How would it work? Now, I know that in recent times there's been a lot of talk about the IC-705 and the lack of an internal antenna tuner inside it. And I think that conversation has been totally exhausted. The fact is that it doesn't have an antenna tuner inside, but there are other options available, and we've got the Aircraft T1A tuner, for example. Icom do their very nice remote tuner, which can match all sorts of things, and is dedicated to the IC-705. But LDG have come up with a tuner which basically does a very similar job. It's dedicated to the IC-705. It's got a data lead that connects to the IC-705, and I suppose that it answers the question of a lot of people. Why can't I buy an IC-705 ATU at a reasonable price? Well, I would hasten to add that the dedicated Icom tuner is very, very good, and it is waterproof, which is one of the things that the LDG tuner is not. But if you don't operate in the rain, as many of us don't, then does it really matter whether it's waterproof or not? So let's have a look at the LDG tuner and see if it is right for you. The Z100 is a compact antenna tuner. It covers 160 metres to 6 metres and measures 140 by 140 millimetres, and the height is 40 millimetres, so it's quite compact. Now if I turn the unit round, you can see that we've got the two SO239 connectors there, input and output. You've got the earth lug there, and here you've got the 3.5mm connector, which is the line that goes back to the tuner socket on the IC-705, and you've got the DC power input there, which will take anything between 8 and 17 volts. There's only one control on the front panel, that's this button here, which will perform several operations, which I'll cover later on. The Z100 uses the L-match circuit, which comprises a number of inductors which can be switched in series with the load, and a number of capacitors which can be switched in parallel with the load. So with these various combinations you achieve a match, and there's a built-in algorithm there to speed things up. I'm not sure what the precise circuit diagram is of the LDG Z100. They don't show the circuit diagram, but as it's an L network, I'm putting up on the screen here the basic L network, which probably represents roughly the tuning arrangement of the Z100. Now it's time to take the lid off and have a look inside the Z100. We remove the cover by taking the two screws out there and the other two on the other side. With the cover removed, you can see that there's the battery tray there for 8 AA cells, so that the unit can be self-powered without having to have an external DC supply, which probably is quite handy if you're going to operate portable. Here's an overhead shot of the ATU with the cover removed, and gives you a better idea of the layout. You can't see too much, of course, because the battery tray is masking a lot, but you can see some of the inductors there. LDG actually include a set of dry cells, which is quite useful. They claim that they could last up to a year because the relays are latching relays, so they're only operative when the tuning. Once the tuning is finished, they are locked in place, so the battery drain is probably quite low. Also included in the kit are the two connecting leads. You've got the BNC to PL259 plug there. The BNC is right angled, so it makes it quite a nice fit onto the IC-705. And then you've got this short 3.5mm stereo lead, which is the control lead going from the Z-100 back to the IC-705. And here you see the Z-100 with the AA cells loaded into the battery container, all ready to go. And I'll show you a shot here of the IC-705 sitting on top of the Z-100. Makes quite a compact little unit. Well, that's the brief spec on the LDG tuner, so let's now put it to the test and see how well it works. First thing to do is to plug the tuner into the tuner socket on your IC-705. This is the second socket from the top on the right hand side of the IC-705. Once you've plugged it in, you should be able to go to the function button there and you press 2, and you should see that the tuner light is lit up. That tuner light will only be illuminated provided you've plugged your LDG tuner into the side of the 705. Now, before we start tuning, we need to know that the tuner is actually in circuit, and this left hand knob here enables you to switch the tuner in and out of circuit. So I press this now, you'll see two flashes. That means to say the tuner is now out of circuit. I press it again, one flash is now back in circuit. So you need to make sure that the tuner is in circuit before you can actually use the tuner with the 705. So make sure when you press this button you get one flash. So press there, it's out of circuit now, two flashes, one flash, it's back in circuit. Now we're ready to go. So I go back to function, I've got tune set up, I just hold in tune. And the radio is now tuned up on 28 megahertz. I've got the radio now switched to 18 megahertz, 17 meters, and I'm using a multi-band vertical which doesn't actually have 17 meters on it. It has 15 meters on it and 20 meters on it, so this will be a pretty horrible match. So we'll just see what happens. Press the function button, got tune there, holding tune, and it now seems to have tuned it. Now, whilst we appear to have a very low SWR, that low SWR only exists between the transceiver and the tuner. The high SWR will still exist on the coax cable from the tuner to the antenna. So we've enabled the IC-705 to deliver full power into the tuner, but a lot of that power will be lost on the coax cable going to the antenna because of the high VSWR. So we've proved the tuner can match a fairly difficult antenna load, but we haven't actually reduced the VSWR along the coax cable, only between the transceiver and the ATU. Hope you follow that. Now let's see exactly what happens when we press the tune button. I'll put a power meter in here so you can see what happens. Now we're on SSB at the moment, so unless we talk into the microphone we wouldn't get any power. But if we go to the tune and we hold this button in here, Now you'll see power going into the meter. It's finished tuning and we're back to receive now. What actually happens is when you press the tune button, the 705 generates a tone for tuning, and that is one of the advantages of the LDG matching unit, or the LDG Z-100 matching unit, is that when it's connected to the IC-705, no matter what mode you're on, if you go to tune and press the tune button, it generates a steady carrier for tuning, which is the way that the system works, and it's a very handy and quick way of tuning up. Now I'll switch back to 18 megahertz, which is a band we've already tuned up on earlier in this video, but let's try it again. So 18 megahertz, we press function, we press the tuner button, and all I get is a click, just a simple single click. The reason for that is because the tuner remembers the frequency, it remembers the impedance of the antenna at that frequency, and it selects it in its memory. Now I'm going to switch to a different antenna. Let the noise come up there, and now let's try it. There we are. You must hold that tuning button for about a second. So that's why I didn't tune first of all. But you can see that it now recognises that there is a different antenna, and it has to go through the procedure again. Now we're on 14 megahertz. I've switched to a different antenna, but I haven't actually done a tune up on this one yet. So go to tune, hold that in for a second, and it's tuned up. Now, although the LDG tuner that we're using here is designed for the IC-705, it can work with any transceiver, provided that you can generate a carrier. The advantage of the 705 dedication is with the data lead in, you just quickly go to tune on the menu system, press it, and no matter what mode you're on, the 705 will generate a steady carrier and the LDG tuner will tune. So now what I've done is I've disconnected the data lead on the 705. So the only thing connecting the tuner to the transceiver is the SO239. So all it's got to work on is RF. Now I've set the ATU meter mode to FM briefly so I can generate a steady tone. And what you do is you press the transmit button, which I've done now. You now hold this button in for a second, release it. And there we are, it's tuned. Bit of a struggle, but it's done it. I've set up here a 16-foot length of wire vertical of a spider pole, and pretty crude but effective feed point there using the spider beam's own little junction box. It's basically an SO239 in the box, and there is a terminal there to connect a wire to it. And I've also got a few radials draped on the balcony here. They're around about, I don't know, 3 or 4 metres long. Sorry to mix the measurements up there, but there we are. It's a length of about 5 metres of wire and about 4 metres of 6 radials draped on the balcony. I'm going to see how that matches, or how that can be matched with the LDG. Let's first try the 30 metre band, 10 megahertz. Hold that in, and it's tuned. Now if I just generate a carrier, you'll see there's very low VSWR. It's the second line up, hardly any movement at all. Now we're going to try it on the 20 metre band. Now I should point out that I've got it set to FM because once I've tuned up, I want to then generate a carrier to show you the VSWR. So let's go into the tune position, hold that for about a second, and it's tuned. So let's now transmit, and once again there's virtually no VSWR. I hope you can see that on the meter. There's virtually no VSWR there. Now I'm on 18 megahertz, and again I've set it to FM. You wouldn't normally use this because you don't need to switch to a carrier when you've got the 705 connected to the LDG with the interface lead, it does it automatically. But after I've done the tune-up, I need to then generate a carrier to show you the VSWR. So here we are, let's hold that for a second. Click, 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 tuning. Bit more time there. Right, let's see what it's made of it. Well, there's about 1.5 SWR. There's a bit of a struggle there, but it's done it. There's about a 1.5 VSWR there, or thereabouts. Now 21 megahertz. And, well, it's matched it. Virtually no VSWR there. Now the 24 megahertz band. Right, about 1.5 there. Not perfect match, but it's got it good enough. 10 meters, 28 megahertz band. Oops. And basically a perfect match there. Let's try 6 meters. Yep, seems to match that okay. Let's now see what it makes of 40 meters. Yep, it's matched that okay. Not to say that it will give a very good, sorry about that, not to say that it will give a very good performance on 40 meters, but it has matched a 5 meter length of wire. Well, probably the most severe test of all is going to be 80 meters. So let's see whether it can do anything. Well, it's actually matched it. There's a bit of SWR there, but very little. It's actually matched 80 meters as well. Here's my portable operation situation from my motorhome, and it's quite a compact little situation. I run the LDG from the internal batteries. I get the impression they're going to last for ages actually, because they've got latch-in relays, and I very often run the IC-705 from its internal battery, which gives me 5 watts out. Sometimes I use an external supply to give me 10 watts, but it's a nice portable operation, and it's very nice to have the LDG tuner, which gives me a perfect match. No matter what antenna I seem to use.
We plan a follow-up video on the Z-100, but before we finish this video, let's look at using the Z-100 with an alternative transceiver.
With the Discovery, it is quite easy to use the Z-100. There is a button there which you can set to tune. I'll press that, generates a signal. If I go now over to the Z-100, press the button in for a second, let it go, and you can hear it tune, and it's now tuned up, and we're ready to go. We'll take that tone off. The tone level, by the way, is around about 3 watts on the Discovery, and it's a handy feature because it generates that tone no matter what mode you're in. If you press that tone button, it will generate 3 watts steady carrier for tuning. I sometimes operate mobile, HF mobile, temporarily using a small mag mount on the roof of the car, mainly on 14 megs and 18 megahertz, which is the bands that I enjoy, and the mag mount will work okay on those bands using a diamond whip, and it makes quite a nice and easy installation. But I still can use the LDG ATU just to perk up the SWR a bit, because with a mobile antenna it's quite narrow banded. In fact, it's very narrow banded, and as soon as you move away from the resonant point, the SWR starts to rise. But even at 2 to 1, provided you can match the antenna, then you'll still deliver a considerable amount of power, and the loss at 2 to 1 on a short length of cable at mobile is very small indeed. So it's handy just to be able to move around the band a bit more using something like the LDG ATU. Here's my temporary mobile installation using the Discovery transceiver. I've got the LDG ATU there wedged in the seat. I don't actually operate on the move this way, but I just park up and operate, and then the Discovery. Battery power, I tend to use a separate battery. Oh, by the way, there's my CW key. Battery power, I use a separate battery there, which I will cover in one of these videos, because it's quite a convenient way and quite a useful way actually. The LDG Z-100 does what it says on the tin. It matches antennas, and it does it very well. In fact, it's matched everything I've thrown at it, and I have presented it with some rather challenging matches, particularly the short vertical whip or wire that I used. So it does it very well. I think that there will be certain antennas or certain combinations that it might struggle with, as indeed all antenna tuners do, but this seems to be pretty versatile. I would say it's more versatile than perhaps the manufacturers suggest in their specification. It covers 160 meters through to 6 meters, so it covers all the bands that most HF rigs cover. It's well made, it's nicely made. It's around about ½ kilo with the batteries inserted, and I have to say that I rather like operating it with the AA cells inserted. LDG claim that they could last up to a year, and I think that's probably true, because it only draws current when it's tuning, and then it's only very briefly. And of course with memories, it very often tunes in a fraction of a second. So it's a nice antenna tuner. It's in a market where there is some competition, but I think really and truly the competition is the three ATUs now. We've got the Icom AH-705, we've got the Elecraft T1A, and we've now got the LDG Z-100-PLUS. The Z-100 probably is very similar to the Icom AH-705, but the AH-705 is waterproof. So I said earlier in the video that if you don't operate in the rain, perhaps that's not so important. And we are now directly importing LDG from the Canadian factory. So we can give you the latest models, we can give you the factory backup, and it's our pleasure really to present this range to you. Don't forget that we've got all this in stock and a lot of other things as well, so give us a ring whatever you need. Thank you for watching this video, and I do appreciate your support. Press the subscribe button, because that'll let you know when the next video is coming up. And in the meantime, enjoy your ham radio, take care, we'll speak soon.